Welcome to Collecting Chaos. My name is James, and today we're going to answer a question. A question that came up on Horizon Picks Friday night auction. Uh, what are the losers from DC Comics? More importantly, who are the losers? We'll answer these questions and a few more right after this. So, what are the losers? The losers are a group of soldiers from different branches of the service who banded together because of the misfortunate backgrounds that each of them had. And in the DC pre-crisis universe, they operated during World War II. They consisted of Gunner and Sarge with Pooch, and they appeared in Our Fighting Forces originally. Captain Storm, the PT commander, PT's boat skipper, Captain Storm was the comic that he appeared in. Johnny Cloud, a pilot, a Navajo pilot that appeared in All American Men of War. And Ona Tornson, who first appeared in Our Fighting Forces number 135 after they had already turned it over to being the losers. She's in pretty much every issue after that. But you don't know who they are. Gunner got his nickname from the submachine gun that he liked to use. And in the future, he was fitted with cybernetic parts and became a member of the Creature Commandos. We're not here to talk about Creature Commandos, so forget I said that. Then we have Sarge. Sergeant Clay grew up in the slums alongside Gunner. Early in their wartime career, the two were assigned a trained dog from the Canine Corps and would alert them to the presence of enemy troops. The dog was nicknamed Pooch. He saved their lives more than a couple of times. So who was Pooch? Pooch is the litter brother of Rex the Wonder Dog. Now, I'm not going to talk about Rex the Wonder Dog because I don't even know if I have any comics that have Rex the Wonder Dog in them. Now, they operated mostly in the Pacific, but later on were reassigned to the European theater, and they were supposed to train some new recruits. So they go out on their first mission, and all the recruits are dead. They're all killed. Of course, Gunner and Sarge blamed themselves for this. Felt like they were losers because they couldn't protect their new recruits. We've got Captain Storm. He was a PT boat skipper, like I said, during World War II. William Storm was the commander of PT-47, which unfortunately got ambushed by a blood-red Japanese submarine. Storm ended up getting thrown into the water and watched helplessly as his ship was sunk and his crew slaughtered to the man. He was the only survivor. It affected him. Now, as part of this, the wound that he had meant his leg was amputated at the knee. But Storm was outfitted with a wooden leg and eventually demonstrated that he had what it took to get his commission back, to get recommissioned back into the Navy. And he had a lot of victories as a naval commander after that, or as a skipper after that. But you know what? He never got over losing that first command of his. And that just followed him everywhere. And he felt like he was a loser because of it. Now we'll go to Johnny Cloud. Johnny Cloud was a pilot. He was named Flying Cloud by his father, a Navajo Indian chief. Johnny felt like he was a victim of prejudice growing up, and even after he got promoted to captain as a pilot, he still felt like he was being discriminated against. Like people were prejudiced against him. And kudos to DC for handling those issues. Now, he eventually got his own command, and every time a pilot died that was under his command, well, he took it personal. He felt like he had failed that pilot. So when he had his wingman, Wyoming, flying beside of him, died in aerial combat, he was so guilt-ridden that Cloud flew right into a mountain. Let's go back to Gunner and Sergeant Pooch. After their mission failed and the people were killed, they got picked up by Jeb Stewart and the Haunted Tank. They also, the Haunted Tank also picked up Captain Storm and Captain Cloud. All of which, when they compared their stories, they all felt like they were losers. They just didn't fit in. And at the suggestion of military high command, those four joined forces and became a detached service task force codenamed the Losers. Wait, didn't I say there was a fifth member? Ona Torrensen? Ona Torrensen was a World War II Norwegian resistance fighter who later on joined the Losers. She was the only female member of the Losers. Now, I'm sure you have some other questions like, Jeb Stewart? What's this Haunted Tank stuff all about? Jeb Stewart was a sergeant in command of a Stewart tank during World War II that was haunted by the ghost of General Stewart. Awesome, huh? And he wasn't a member of the Losers, but, I mean, he did show up in the origin story, so I had to kind of include him. Jeb Stewart in the Haunted Tank was featured in GI Combat and was the second longest DC Comics war feature behind Sergeant Rock in Our Army at War, which of course later became Sergeant Rock. Didn't last long after they changed the name for some reason. You know what? Let's talk about a couple other characters that were part of the World War II military thing that DC Comics had. They were building a whole world. It had a character named Mademoiselle Marie. Now, she was a young French woman who joined the French Resistance during World War II, and she had a group. Of her macaw, and she often would work alongside Americans and Allied soldiers, including Sergeant Rock, who she had an on-again romance with, and the Unknown Soldier, who she was not a fan of. In fact, she held the Unknown responsible for the death of some of the people that worked with her, and threatened to kill him several times. But there was some time, or at some point she had an affair with a British officer operating in France, who would later become the butler to Thomas and Martha Wayne, and after their untimely demise would raise their son Bruce, who of course became the Batman. Now, Mademoiselle Marie had a child by the union with Alfred Pennyworth, who she named Julia, who shows up later on. All of this stuff is pre-crisis. They changed it several times after that. In fact, some of these characters ceased to exist after Crisis, and they ended up bringing them back later. But I mentioned the Unknown Soldier, so I should probably bring him up too. The Unknown Soldier was an unnamed man who joined the U.S. Army in the early part of World War II, along with his brother, Harry. They both got assigned to the same unit in the Pacific, and Harry always said that one man being in the right place at the right time could mean the difference in winning and losing a battle. Well, Harry was killed. He was killed saving his brother from a Japanese grenade. The explosion disfigured his brother's face beyond repair. And his brother, who was now scarred, took what Harry said to heart, became a one-man undercover agent, and trained until he reached the peak of his physical perfection. He was skilled in makeup and learned how to impersonate pretty much anybody he wanted to. And he worked out of the Pentagon, and he traveled both the European and Pacific theaters of World War II to always be in the right place at the right time. And he was featured in Star Spangled War Stories, which later was retitled The Unknown Soldier. I'm going to talk about one other character who was not a loser, and that's the Gravedigger. And I'm only including him because he's a really cool character, and not many people know much about him. Gravedigger had polio as a child. His name was Ulysses Hazard, and he overcame his polio. He got to the point where he could walk and run and pretty much be a normal person. Of course, we know this is not something that can happen, or if it can happen, it's exceedingly rare. So Ulysses Hazard enlisted at the outbreak of World War II, and he excelled in his training, become an expert marksman with exceptional stamina. But he was a frustrated soldier because all he ever got was Graves detail. That's because he was black. I'm sorry if you were offended by that, but that is the story, so that's how it has to be told. Now, Hazard's friend was killed by he had a friend, obviously we all have friends. Well, he had a friend that was killed by a Nazi fighter plane. It was too much. Hazard went AWOL. He went to Washington, D.C. He managed to slip by the security and break into the officers of the Joint Chiefs of Staff just to prove he was more than just a gravedigger. Well, they were impressed. And they turned him into a one-man unit, sending him on secret missions in the European theater of operations. And during a mission in the Sahara, he was injured. And the injury left a cross-shaped scar at the bridge of his nose and that ran across his forehead. His code name was the Gravedigger. Now, the Gravedigger showed up. Let's step back for a second. No one really knows what happened to the Gravedigger after World War II. He just disappears. But he does show up for the American Bicentennial, where General Ulysses Hazard, yeah, he got promoted a few times, met up with the losers, Jeb Stuart and Mademoiselle Marie. And now you know why I included him in the group, because they all showed up at the American Bicentennial. After the American Bicentennial, they went to a bar where Mademoiselle Marie's son joins them, and they kind of look at him and think, he looks an awful lot like Sergeant Rock. They suspected that it was Rock's son. But wait, there's more. They also suspected that Bob the bartender was actually the unknown soldier. And now you know a little bit about the losers. Go get some of the comics and read them. They're great. They've got some great art. Joe Kubert, Russ Heath, Jack Kirby. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. They absolute fabulous artists. Worth your time to read them if you get a chance. That's all I got for you. See you Friday. Bye.